737-1045 is how you get involved with the conversation. So let's start, because we've got a bunch of name, image, and likeness stuff to get to. We will have Rhett Bryan in studio, the great one of Titans Radio, and we will talk about records that we believe in the NFL will be broken in a 17-game, an expanded 17-game regular season schedule. Because, of course, Titans fans are going to be looking at Derrick Henry and saying, all right, man, do it again. Let's see you break the record. You got an extra game to do it this year. We'll talk about the feasibility of that later on in the show, but we have to start with Vanderbilt. Now, 126 years, Mississippi State has been participating in team sports. And at the college level, their first national championship last night, they won with a 9-0 victory over Vandy in the College World Series. 9-0. The idea that Vanderbilt, in these two losses, Game 2 and Game 3, was outscored 22-2 shocked me. I could not believe how poorly they performed. Now, of course, I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on Kumar Rocker today. I do not blame Kumar Rocker for how things transpired last night, even though it was uncharacteristic the way that the Vandy hitters were able to get after him. The defense for Vanderbilt fell off a cliff. I don't understand what happened. This is the thing that we've been talking about the last couple of days. And really, into last night, I thought there's no way that this particular Vanderbilt team, coached by this legendary coach, there's no way that they could possibly remain this inconsistent. Surely they would find some middle ground. Surely they would find a way to level things out. And I think what's unfortunate in all of this is just how non-competitive the College World Series, all three games were, where you have Vandy blowing out Mississippi State on the first night, and then Mississippi State just basically dominates Vanderbilt en route to winning the championship. Now, I don't want to take away from Vandy the fact that they got back to the College World Series to try and defend their title. They may have failed in defending their College World Series title from 2019, but it is an accomplishment nonetheless for them to be able to get there. So let's not completely take everything away from them today. But the idea that they got shut out and damn near no hit against Mississippi State last night, I couldn't believe it. Tim Corbin, in his post-game press conference, I didn't have the opportunity to watch all of it, but I did watch his opening statements and some of the comments that he was making about Kumar Rocker, because, of course, that's the last game that he will play for Vanderbilt. But this was Tim Corbin opening up his media availability last night, just kind of trying to compartmentalize everything that went wrong for them in the College World Series. All right, we'll get to Tim Corbin here in just a second. But basically, and I thought he handled. He's forever a classy and graceful individual, and it was about Mississippi State winning. Tim Corbin did not take the opportunity to make that post-game press conference about Vandy. He was very congratulatory, spoke very highly of Mississippi State, and how could you not? I mean, they put on an otherworldly performance en route to winning this College World Series. So let's hear from Tim Corbin last night in his media availability.
Well, I mean, I think it's a time right now to thank the NCAA and the people of Omaha for hosting the tournament. When none of us took this for granted, none of us knew that we could potentially get people in here to watch these kids. It was such a celebration of baseball here in June, something we really needed. It's something the city needed. And I commend the NCAA and Omaha for being able to pull this off in the manner that they did and keeping everyone healthy and safe. The other thing is congratulations to Chris, Jake, Cheese, Scotty, John Cohen, their athletic director, Mississippi State, their players, their fan base for winning this thing. They're very good and very deserving. That's a very tough team in so many different ways. We knew that when they came to Nashville, but you could see who they were once the tournament started to finish. great comeback for them in so many ways. I think they realized that they were never out of this thing, even after we beat them in the first game. They pitched so well. Bednar was outstanding. Sims is next-level reliever. The players are tough. They're really tough. They do such a nice job of playing offense and playing defense. It's a very good team, and we send our congratulations over to them and everyone from Mississippi State.
That was Tim Corbin last night in his media availability. Now, you'll hear from him on Kumar Rocker here in just a second, because obviously he's been a transcendent athlete. In the state of Tennessee for Vanderbilt University, Kumar Rocker is a special player and will go on to have a special career in the pros. I have no doubts about that. But for Vanderbilt, I mean, Brent Matlock makes the point on Facebook Live, where you can get involved in the Zone TV chat on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Vanderbilt had more errors than hits last night. 3-1.
And that plagued them throughout the College World Series.
They had 10 hits in 3 games, Vanderbilt did. Outscored 22-2 in these 2 losses. I don't know what happened to Vanderbilt's ability to hit. Really, I mean, basically into the last month of the season and throughout the postseason. Lethargic is probably the best way that I can put it. But there was no ability to make, to barely make contact. Again, they almost got no hit last night. Lucas, you told, when's the last time that Vanderbilt got shut out?
Well, they didn't get shut out all season until falling to NC State early on in Omaha. Their second game against NC State, 1-0. This was only the second time all year.
615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Lonzo on YouTube says Vandy is first class. Yeah, nobody is taking that away from them. And again, they made it back to the College World Series after winning the damn thing in 2019. Of course, no College World Series played in 2020 due to COVID. So this is not like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, despite getting a bit embarrassed in the College World Series, the final series, to be able to make it back to this point is still an incredible accomplishment. But the errors, the constant errors from a Vanderbilt team that we are so accustomed to being a clean operation, a precise operation, machine-like, lacking largely human traits. They're just basically the big, bad behemoth that goes into Omaha and wins titles. That's what Vanderbilt is. And in the last 2 games, they looked infinitely human. Really, throughout the course of their time in Omaha, they looked infinitely human.
And Mississippi State, credit to them for jumping on Christian Little, a young pitcher who probably has a bright future but had a rough week in Omaha. But to follow that up with the performance they had against Kumar Rocker, like this is the same Mississippi State team that Tennessee run-ruled in the SEC tournament like 3 weeks ago. And they did that against Will Bednar and their ace pitchers. Will Bednar was 6 hitless innings last night. So that's just SEC baseball. But Mississippi State, to bounce back the way they did, I didn't see that coming. And it just sucks that all 3 games were awful.
You know who did? Tony Vitello.
He called it, yeah.
He absolutely called his shot. And his team was the one that run-ruled Mississippi State, as you said. He was our College World Series analyst, and he said he fully expected Mississippi State to bounce back after losing Game 1 to Vanderbilt.
They went 2-0 at the SEC tournament.
Yeah. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We'll go to Chris. Chris, the first caller of the day. He's in the borough. He wants to weigh in. Good morning, Chris.
Yes. My question with the NCAA is that what if you you recruit a number 1 running back to a university and he gets paid these big bucks, and then the offensive line decides, well, we'll end your career real quick because we're not getting paid.
Okay, Chris is asking about you're asking about name, image, and likeness, right, Chris?
Say what?
You're talking about the name, image, and likeness legislation that just got passed.
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we get into that coming up next, Chris? Because I've got a whole spiel prepared on that. So we will conclude our Vanderbilt coverage for the season and move to now the wild, wild west. I want to before we move on completely to name, image, and likeness, because that's what we're going to get into coming up next, because I will tell you, and we'll answer Chris's question on the other side. But I want to leave you guys with this. It's Tim Corbin talking about what it was like to coach a player like Kumar Rocker. Now, there's about 30 seconds of silence because he is deeply emotional about this. So you're going to hear me pop in just so we don't have 30 seconds of dead air. But let's start things off with the question to Tim Corbin, and then people can hear just how long it took for him to compose himself.
Tim, what are you going to remember the most from coaching Kumar?
So he's at the podium right now, Tim Corbin is, and he's trying to pull himself together a little bit. Clearly he's struggling.
I can't say right now. I mean, he's just a 1 in a million kid. His fibers are so real and so pure. He just loves team. He's connected to competition. He's connected to his teammates in such a way that he's just the ultimate college pitcher, ultimate college teammate, ultimate college baseball player. He'll go down as one of the best we've ever had at Vanderbilt. I don't like to categorize the kids because I don't want to slight anyone, but my gosh, this kid he's meant so much to our program. He's meant a lot to college baseball. He's meant a lot to the SEC. He's the best reflection of his parents. It's high praise. He's just done everything right. I love that young man.
That's Tim Corbin talking about Kumar Rocker, whose career at Vanderbilt comes to an unfortunate end, given all the things that he's been able to accomplish. But I wanted people to hear that because it's, I don't know, I think it's even in an a not ideal moment when you've just suffered an incredible loss after making it to the final game. Somebody's got to lose, right? But just to hear the care in Tim Corbin's voice for this young man, as we get ready to talk about how cold of a business collegiate athletics is about to become, and really already has been, that moment I think really humanizes a lot of it, because there are genuinely good coaches who care for the children, young men and women that they are tasked with guiding through 4 or 5 years of their collegiate careers.
And on the flip side of that with Kumar, like there's not many kids that would have come back to school after the freshman year he had, winning a national title, pitching that no-hitter in the Super Regional, to not only come back for his sophomore year, they got cut off, but his junior year. 3 years in college, a pitcher of his caliber, that's rare to see.
It is. We'll continue to be able to see him. It'll just be in the pros. Name, image, and likeness, though. How do you think it is going to change college sports? Because I honestly don't think that much is going to change. And I'll tell you why coming up next. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1045, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
Do you breathe Titans football? Yeah, so do we. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
different. There's a couple of different ways to approach this, right? But I think we have to start first in helping people understand exactly what's happening today. Now, you all know by now, I'm certain, that collegiate athletes are going to be able to capitalize financially on their name, image, and likeness. We've talked at length about the Supreme Court ruling on the matter, how they went 9-0 on the NCAA's neck about how there is no other marketplace in American commerce that is as unjust, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that is as unjust as the NCAA's stranglehold is on college athletes and their inability to profit off of being the workforce for a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, states that have passed NIL legislation that go into effect today: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Mississippi, Nebraska, New Mexico, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Texas. In terms of states that have passed the official legislation that will go into effect within the next 4 years: Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maryland, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So the universities have been preparing themselves, and the NCAA has been not really doing much in the way of preparation. But the universities have taken it upon themselves to figure out how best this is going to work in as even a way possible. Now, before we get into what the University of Tennessee put out today, because they are very, very much gearing up, and have been for several years, gearing up for the ability to use Tennessee's brand as a way to uplift the athletes that play there. Because whether or not they're having success on the field or the court or in the swimming pool or wherever else collegiate athletics are taking place on campus in Knoxville, they know that they can brand well. That's the best thing that Tennessee does. Now, maybe that doesn't mean anything to anybody who only cares about the wins and losses results on Saturday at Neyland Stadium. I understand if you are one of those people. But there are going to be impacts, ripple effects, certainly until January 1st, because right now we're in this interim phase. This is the wild, wild west. This is the NCAA, their lack of action, basically creating a chaotic and uneven playing field among the various conferences, various universities, and the athletes who stand to profit from all of this. The NCAA hadn't done squat in this other than be handed L after L after L, which gives me great delight. But it is going to be an interesting situation to see how thousands of college athletes across the country are eligible to do something they've never legally been able to do, which is profit from their likeness through endorsements, business ventures, and things like public appearances. So David Ubben is keeping track of this for the University of Tennessee. David Ubben, I believe, Lucas, correct me if I'm not wrong, who will be on Blaine and Mickey later today? Okay, so make sure that you're staying tuned. You've got plenty of reasons to stay tuned to the Zone all day, but Blaine and Mickey will have David Ubben, who covers the Vols exceptionally well for theathletic.com. Tennessee walk-on offensive lineman Parker Ball, who has more than 5,000 Twitter followers, signed on as a brand ambassador for Extra Points, a newsletter focused on college sports. David also has put out there a few Vols announced partnerships to monetize their name, image, and likeness after it was allowed at midnight. Cade Mays is helping host an event next week. Wide receiver Grant Furking, I don't want to mispronounce his name. His last name scares me. But Furking made a post on his social media platforms that was sponsored by a home loans company, and Theo Jackson announced a partnership with a gaming app. Furking also launched a company built to help broker NIL deals. Now, Lucas, you pointed out to me earlier that Grant Furking has signed one of his teammates for the company that he owns.
Yes. Yeah, David Ubben also did a great piece on this 1 or 2 years ago. Furking, a walk-on.
I think it was in like 2018.
Yeah, it was definitely early Pruitt era, but a walk-on who runs his own business and, makes money off it because he's not on scholarship on the football team. But, yeah, so he's having teammates endorse his own product.
I love so much about this because I don't, there are, and let me start by saying this, okay? I have great respect for college football as an institution because the way that people care, especially in this part of the country, in SEC country, particularly Vols fans, the way that they care about their university, the way that they're invested in their university, I have such a great amount of respect for the way that it is treated. It's almost like a holy day. You know, the NFL gets Sundays, college football gets Saturdays, but in the Southeast, we know that college football is king. There is no bigger fan base in this state than the Tennessee Volunteers. It's why Neyland Stadium is bigger than Nissan Stadium. It's why there is so much more passion, and there's plenty of passionate Titans fans for sure, but there is so much more passion, sometimes to the detriment, if they're on Twitter, with Vols fans. But with college football in general, I've been waiting for them to crack this piggy bank open for so long now. We talked about it on J. Martin Ramon this morning. The NCAA has been hoarding all of the finances outside of what they are paying to the coaches, and we'll get to Dabo Swinney later because I've been waiting. I got up at 5 a.m. this morning. I've been waiting since 5 a.m. to just rip Dabo Swinney for the stupidity that he's been propagating for several years now about how, you know, he may quit coaching college football if the athletes get paid because there's too much entitlement in this country. Aha! Poor Dabo. Lucas, I can't tell if my fake cry amuses you or confuses you.
No, it's amusing.
Okay. Aha! Aha! 615-737-1045.
Odds Dabo Swinney actually follows his word on that.
No. Save Dabo for later. I got all day to talk about name, image, and likeness. Let me stay on track right now because I got all the smoke in the world for Dabo. But with this system where college athletes can now make money off social media, sponsored posts, and advertisements, things like autograph sales, their YouTube and Twitter, their YouTube channels and Twitter videos, which also I would imagine includes, you know, TikTok and Instagram, IG Lives, things of that nature. 615-737-1045. They can do things like private training lessons, merch. The way that Barstool has basically built an empire is how now college athletes can do the same. And of course, you have the typical, like what I make money off of, endorsement deals with the great people that I work with around here. But with this business that college football has been in, I have never been disillusioned about what college football is because there are pure elements of it. The passion of the fans I consider largely to be pure. Now, the actions of the boosters, inherently not pure because they have been funding this shadow industry for quite some time before it was laid bare in front of us. The greed laid bare in front of us. Certainly in the last calendar year because there was no other reason to play professional sports or college sports, certainly, through a pandemic other than outright greed. And that's fine because that's how I make my money too. I'm a part of that business. But with this, now we are finally having an open marketplace for a workforce that has been inherently taken advantage of. And there are plenty of people, many of you who are listening to this radio station right now would say, many of you probably feel that, fine, let the college athletes profit off name, image, and likeness, but take their scholarships away. No. There's a reason that that's not happening. There are so much money that is made off of these guys, the scholarship, the training tables, the tutoring, the food, the meals, whatever, the travel, the bowl game gifts that these guys get. It's a pittance. It's a fraction of what is being made off of them appearing on national television in bowl games, filling SEC stadiums, things of this nature. So now they're finally at least getting a little further, a little more of a taste of what they are actually funding, basically, with their efforts, with their competition, with their play on the field. But for me, I want to see how this interim period is going to play out because we are currently July 1st to January 1st, 2022. This is an interim period for them to kind of feel this thing out. Now, Trey Wallace spoke really well. He was on this radio show. Trey Wallace, who covers the Vols for Rocky Top Insider, makes regular appearances across the four shows on this station. But I asked Trey, what was that? Last week we had him on, Lucas, about what Tennessee's plan was to be able to manage this, because this has to be a nightmare for for sports information directors, what are called SIDs. You have an SID for football, for basketball, for women's golf. Each sport has an SID that's assigned for dealing with the athletes, the coaches, the go-between between the media, and all of the other appearances, obligations that they have to do. So this cracks open a whole new hellscape of responsibilities for those SIDs. So outside of it being a monster headache for them, what are the university's plans with how they implement and manage name, image, and likeness when everybody breaks the piggy bank open? And Trey Wallace filled us in on at least what the University of Tennessee is planning to do.
They've got a company. They've got a company involved in how they're proactively going to try to market these players. I don't know if you saw the screenshot that was going around with players this past weekend where they were talking about how, July 1st, marketing opportunities available for us, blah, 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 whatever. So
Yeah.
Tennessee's doing some things off the field when it comes to clothing. I don't know how to put it. Some of the football players are doing some modeling for some clothing. I think they're trying to get ready for what's coming because it's going to be really simple. And once people start learning about this and really reading, Buck, you could DM, Brian Maurer or Harrison Bailey and say, Harrison, I would really like for you to come to a football camp that I'm putting on.
Yeah.
Or come speak at a seminar that I'm putting on. You pay him that money. You would come up with some money, $250, whatever. If it's $100,000 you want to pay him, that's cool. But he would then submit that to the company that's working with Tennessee. They would approve it. They handle all of his taxes, and bam, that's how you set up an event with a player. It's going to be as simple as that. Company is going to be flooding these players' DMs, trying to get them to come to their barbecue restaurant, their football camp, their kid's birthday party. It's going to be inundated, and I'm interested to see how Tennessee handles it. I think they have a plan. I think they have the right people in place to handle this, but it's going to be a train wreck at first, and I'm all about watching it.
Trey Wallace is right there with me.
Every Tennessee reporter. Just fun to watch train wrecks.
Oh, yeah. What did you just say?
Train wrecks.
What happened there?
Train wrecks.
You waxing trains? 615-737-1045. That's mean. I've screwed up words trying to come out of my mouth so many times, and every time Lucas does it, I just pounce on him. But, yeah, that's Trey Wallace talking about. Now, Lucas, you had some information. Here's an opportunity to redeem yourself. You had some information on how the Haslam School of Business, of course, for Jimmy Haslam, is involved in this company that Trey Wallace brought up about how Tennessee is planning on managing the athletes and the sponsorship opportunities, the endorsement opportunities that come their way.
Yeah, essentially, Tennessee's plan for NIL is in partnership with this company that Trey referred to called Altius and the Haslam College of Business. And it comes with class credit. And David Ubben worded it. It comes with class credit and an enhanced entrepreneurship minor. So when recruits go on official visits under Josh Heupel, there's a good portion of the visit with kind of a come-together meeting of here's what we would do for your branding. Recruits are getting packets with customized logos with, their initials on it.
Yeah.
What do you love? What do you represent? What do you want to brand?
How do you want to be branded?
So it's going to turn into a huge part of recruiting at this point. And Tennessee is trying to jump all over it because, at this point, if you're not for it, if you're not jumping on this and utilizing it as a tool, you're done. You're falling behind. It's over.
Without question.
You're either for it or you're out of college football at this point. There's no in between.
So we're getting a lot of questions about this that I want to get to on the other side. And I'm going to tell you how it can work to the detriment of the universities, because this is a thing as well, which, by the way, it's not to the detriment of the universities. It's to the benefit of the athletes. This is where we see the marketplace start to become a more level playing field. But first, I want to go to Chris in Nashville, who's got a comment for me on my buddy Dabo Sweeney. What's up, Chris?
My only comment is really, do you think that it's possible that he's got boosters in his ear basically telling him to say the things that he's saying? You know, like, I mean, I don't think Dabo truly believes in what he's saying. I really don't. I think he's got voices in his ear, you know, telling him what to say. Because I don't see why he would have a problem with any of them getting paid.
Well,
it makes
go ahead,
zero
Chris. I'm
sense
sorry.
why they should not be paid.
Yeah, no, I think that's there's probably some of that. I appreciate the call. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. I mean, I'm sure that there are boosters across the country who have their lips basically to the head coach of their alma mater's ears, right? Like, I don't think that, and I don't know that to be the case with Dabo. But I think, honestly, Chris, and this is how I'll defend Dabo, I think he's very genuine in what he says. I just think a lot of what he says is ignorant.
But think about now negative recruiting against Dabo Swinney from Florida State or South Carolina, trying to get the same prospects out of the state of South Carolina. Like, hey, remember what Dabo Swinney said? He didn't want you to get paid. He's changing his tone now. But this guy didn't want you to get paid. He was very steadfast in that.
Yeah. We will continue this conversation because I want to get into how this can adversely affect the universities as well. Andrew Brandt of Sports Illustrated made several really good points. Some shocking figures. I'm going to give you some numbers about what college athletes are going to be paid just for radio appearances. Because I know what this looks like a little bit. I don't know the exact numbers on the NFL side for when players make regular radio appearances, but I have a good idea. We'll continue with that, and we'll get into your calls as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
From the field to the locker room, with 11 years of NFL experience, Ramon Foster delivers a unique perspective every weekday morning. J. Mart and Ramon, tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
Reising Show playlist in your Spotify app. What's the count on that, by the way? How many songs are we up to?
Over 100.
Over 100?
Yes.
Have we played the entire catalog that you've put on the playlist?
Every song that is on that playlist has been played coming back from break.
Okay. Well, we're 3 or 4 months into this thing by now. There's probably about 100 songs that we've played. So if you like Lucas's music selection, you can go check it out there. 615-737-1045. We're continuing the conversation about name, image, and likeness legislation that officially goes into effect, has been in effect since midnight this morning. So many people have questions, and I want to talk about how this is going to adversely affect universities in a way that you probably didn't think about. But this is how we're starting to see the playing field level out, which delights me. But first, we'll go to Darrington, who's in Nashville. He's got an NIL question. Good morning, Darrington.
Morning to you, Buck. And by the way, since you have been to Nashville, I must admit you have won me over, Buck. You and Lucas, y'all do a great job, and I appreciate your perspective. It's a little dicey there at first, but hey, you give somebody some time, and they get you.
No, listen, that's my entire life. I appreciate that honesty. Thank you, Darrington.
All right, my question is, so for these guys that are like, you got your 3-star recruits, your 5-star recruits, and all that, the separation guys, does this put more pressure on coaches and ADs to get the 2-star guys and those type of players more playing time, or even drawing those guys to sign them into the school period? Like, and then you have like the small schools like Dartmouth and stuff like that. How do you get players to want to play there, knowing that you have your 5 stars and your walk-ons who's going to get all the money? How do you get those guys interested to want to be at your school if they're not going to get the same type of endorsement possibilities?
Now, I appreciate the question, and that kind of falls in line with Chris talking about the offensive lineman and the running back, right? So there's going to be some disparities. You're going to have star players who are going to make infinitely more money than, say, the 8th offensive lineman on any given roster.
Which is the case in the NFL.
100%. And actually, Tom Pelissero just tweeted out something having to do with the NFL and NIL, which I'll read to you here in just a second. So basically the answer, Darrington, is there are going to be inherently, this is the problem that I was talking about earlier. The NCAA has not taken proactive measures on this, so they haven't inherently created this chaotic market where you're going to see these kind of disparities. Now, one way that those can be mitigated is if, say, we're talking about the 7th or 8th offensive lineman on a roster, say he has 1 million followers on TikTok. His value is not going to be determined by the amount of playing time that he gets, but on the reach that his social media platform has. Now, maybe he gets that initial following because he plays at the University of Alabama, or he plays at Tennessee, or he plays at Ohio State. Maybe he gets that initial foundation from the university and the branding work that they've done for all of their athletes, because as Lucas brought up, this is a part of their recruiting pitch now. But it is incumbent upon him. How he can make up for that disparity is if he's good at TikTok or if he's compelling on Instagram. Twitter matters a little less, although I do think that when you see exorbitant numbers on Twitter, when you get into the 50,000, 100,000, you're going to be able to profit off that in some way, shape, or form. But, I mean, I was just telling the story on J. Martin Ramon this morning because I did a segment with them, because I'm not talking enough, it seems. But I was telling the story of I went to my little sister's high school graduation about a month ago, and the valedictorian was giving a speech about, not only her accomplishments as the valedictorian, but on the rest of the class in different ways that they've excelled in their various lanes, whether it be soccer, football, academics, academic decathlon, whatever. Then she gets to one boy in the class who is north of 1 million followers in high school on TikTok, who is already profiting in high school off of the following that he has created on TikTok because he's a compelling follow. That is where you will see athletes start to make up the disparities. If their content is such that they are worth the follow, even if their play on the field does not make them as compelling, 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. if they are not based on the skill of their ability on the field or their inability to crack the starting lineup, they then have the ability to make that up in how much reach they can generate on their respective social media platforms. This is how we're going to see things level out. Now, there's one thing, before I get to Tom Pelissero's tweet, I've been talking about what Andrew Brandt of Sports Illustrated had to say as to how this will take away from the university's finances. Andrew Brandt tweeted, "Here's the problem with NIL for athletic departments beyond compliance issues." Because regardless of how they maneuver around compliance and what the definition or how the definition of compliance changes with all of this, there will be issues. But anyway, here is the problem with NIL for athletic departments beyond compliance issues. Sponsors may decide to divert their advertising budget away from the school and towards the athletes. So let's take I don't want to give any free shout outs, but let's say, okay, our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans, because they sponsor a lot of the Titans radio coverage. They bring us Coach Mack every week, right? And also, if you're watching on Zone TV, they have provided me with this lovely water bottle. And Lucas has one too. I think we all have one. Anyway, so say Farm Bureau Health Plans is a sponsor of just the Titans in general. Well, let's use a college since we're talking about NIL. Say Farm Bureau Health Plans is a sponsor of Vanderbilt athletics. All right? Across the board. Basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, football, all of it. Say Farm Bureau Health Plans decides, for our money, we're not getting as much value out of sponsoring the entirety of Vanderbilt athletics as we would if we were to sponsor or have the star baseball player, Kumar Rocker. If we were to have Kumar Rocker, a star pitcher at Vanderbilt, if we were to endorse him, he is one of the most recognizable faces on campus. This would be a much better allocation of our resources than spending it across Vanderbilt athletics for a much larger sum for not as much of the traction as Farm Bureau Health Plans as a brand is trying to gain. That takes away from Vanderbilt's finances, but it benefits Kumar Rocker. So this will happen to athletic departments across the country. Darren Rovell is a little bit of a weirdo on Twitter for a great many reasons, but when it comes to sports business, Darren knows his stuff. What Darren adds to this Andrew Brandt tweet is that huge ambush opportunities for non-sponsors. Don't want to pay for the official school sponsorship? Just sign the starting quarterback. This is what we're talking about. This is the inequities that have existed. The schools have been able to profit wholesale off of these sponsorship dollars. Now the athletes will be able to physically take from the university some of these finances and inherently benefit themselves.
The changes will come from how the athletes handle it, right? From player to player.
Yes.
That's where the biggest changes of college football will come.
Yes. And we will, we're going to do a whole nother hour on this later in the show. This is the most important story in sports today, nonstop. So we'll come back to this later because there are a lot more layers that I want to get into, specifically what Lucas brought up and how I think there's a great, outside of the finances, outside of what it's going to do for their wallets, for their purses, for their bank accounts, for their pocketbooks. Is pocketbooks even a word that people say anymore? What's the average age of somebody who says the word pocketbook?
I think it's a pretty general term.
I would say probably 50s. Anyway. Outside of what it benefits them financially, there are life skills that these guys are going to be able to learn that we'll get into later in the show. But coming up next, we're going to pivot a little bit. Actually, let's get to Casey in Lewisburg really quickly before we pivot to some NFL conversation. Casey in Lewisburg wants to talk about the NIL legislation. Go ahead, Casey.
What's going on, Buck? So, yeah, like you just said, I was gonna say, people are just looking at it as a monetary gain. These guys are gonna.
All right, Casey, your phone line is horrendous, so we have to fade you out. But maybe give us a call back on a landline or something. Do people even have landlines anymore? I don't know. But Casey, give us a call back and we'll try again later because that phone line was awful. It sounded like you were sinking into a sea of static. But coming up next, We're going to talk about the expanded NFL regular season, 17 games in the regular season for every NFL team. That has the potential to see a lot of long-standing NFL single season records. They will fall. We'll talk about which ones have the most potential to, and what the odds of somebody like, say, Derrick Henry breaking the NFL single-season rushing record are with an expanded regular season. Rhett Bryan will join us as well, of course, of Titans radio fame. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
When you need to know all the info faster, check out the Zone Daily Podcast with Will Bowling. Available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the entire Zone Podcast Network. 104.5 The Zone.
Oh, that's awful. I don't ever want to hear that again. Get that out of here.
What do you want?
What is that? It sounded like I was in a laser light show. No, that stinks
you
too.
Want to stick with that?
What do you?
What do you want from me over here? What's the damn news?
I want you actually to give me breaking news when you give me breaking news at the top of the hour. Not this awful laser light show in my ear. Anyway, breaking news from the Nashville Predators. The Preds have just announced a trade. Victor Arvidsson is going to the Los Angeles Kings. The Preds acquire a 2021 and a 2022 draft pick from LA for Victor Arvidsson. Nashville now owns 8 picks, including 3 in the top 50 in this upcoming NHL draft. So, the Preds send Arvidsson to the Kings. They get back the Kings' second-round pick this year and the third-round pick in 2022 with the acquisition, with the trading away of Victor Arvidsson. That's a pretty big deal.
I mean, that's the guy with the single-season goal-scoring record for this franchise.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's a meaningful move. Now, Lucas, if you can look up for me really quickly what the salary cap implications of trading Arvidsson away are, if you would be so kind. And if you want to react to the trading away of Victor Arvidsson, unexpected Preds content on July the 1st, who'd have thunk? But he has a fairly high salary. They signed him to a contract extension a handful of years ago. I don't know what his average annual salary is right now, but I know he's up there because he was a part of the group that got paid after the Stanley Cup run that the Preds made in 2017.
Yeah, making an average salary of a touch over $4.2 million, which was his cap hit.
Right. So that's about half as much as what Duchesne and Johansson make. Right?
Yes.
Because they're on the books for $8 million a year average annual salary.
So here's a guy that you signed to a 7-year, nearly $30 million contract that really, after the first couple games of the first-round playoff series against Carolina, kind of stopped being a factor in the lineup.
And injuries contributed to that, but
Yes.
the production simply wasn't there. So now we're all looking at look at David Poyle out here rattling everybody's cages. Oh, you got the 2022 Stadium Series. Oh, let's shake it up a little more.
Oh, NIL in full effect. How about this?
How about this? They do that a lot. They announce like contract press conferences for Ryan Johansson in the middle of like the first day of Titans training camp.
No, it's very NFL of them.
I respect it.
Absolutely.
So what does this mean to the construction of the team? Lucas, you can speak better on this than I can. Actually, if people want to get involved, 615-737-1045 is how you do so. 615-737-1045. This has a substantial ripple effect, not just for what it does to the team financially. And I'm sure, listen, I am sure that there is a fair amount of pain that comes with this. Understanding that you have a hockey team that, by most accounts, underperformed in the regular season, even as they had a strong finish to make the postseason with as about as slim a margin as humanly possible. By the time that they did make it in and performed admirably is probably not the word, but performed adequately in a playoff series, a Stanley Cup playoff series against the Carolina Hurricanes. But you needed to shake something up. The question was, would it just simply be a highly paid player being acquired by the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft?
3 weeks from now.
Or would it be something more maybe not more substantive, because that's, the name that's on everybody's lips is Matt Duchesne. Because I see V-Love quote tweeting the Preds trade alert notification saying, do Duchesne next. 3 weeks, V-Love. 3 weeks. You can make it to the expansion draft or Johansson.
On that note, Adam Vingan with the note on the expansion draft. The trade of Victor Arvidsson also simplifies the Predators' approach to the Seattle expansion draft. One less forward to protect.
Right. So it opens things up. So what does this mean? What does this mean? What are the implications for the expansion draft? Does it make it easier now to offload one of these contracts that you have to get rid of, namely Duchesne?
Yeah, I think that was going to be the case the whole way because you've got your two highest paid players on the team that have been underperforming in the postseason, especially with Duchesne. They had their bright spots, but especially in the regular season, they were both very bad, Duchesne especially. So, yeah, I mean, you have an opportunity here to get rid of a contract that basically, like a free pass almost, you're just wary of delivering a player to an expansion franchise that could potentially blossom.
Cousin Andrew in the comments on YouTube, where you can interact with the show on Zone TV, says, and the selling begins. More to come, I bet. I don't think that's so. I don't know. I have zero inside information, and we can't have Vingan on the radio show because he has financial obligations elsewhere, and that's fine. Maybe we can see what Alex Doherty's on a road, like a 10-hour road trip back from Omaha, Nebraska, because he's a Vandy baseball fan.
Wonder if he's seen this yet.
I'm sure he has. I'm sure he's scrambling in the car. I hope for his sake there's somebody else in the car with him so that he can take to Twitter or write something nice and informative at A2ZSportsNashville.com. But, I mean, Arvidsson performed well up until the point that he got paid. 88 goals in the first 4 years of his contract, which led the Preds by a substantial margin. But now this is starting to be a signal, I think, to Preds fans and to just the general Nashville sports fan who cares about the Preds, the success or the failures of the Nashville Predators. This is a signal not only to Preds fans that they are not satisfied with the result of this most recent postseason, but it's also a message to that locker room. Hey, head on a swivel, boys. It wasn't good enough last year. David Poile, it seemed like he's going anywhere anytime soon, and this man is trying to maximize what little window he individually has left. 615-737-1045. Now, Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio points this out on Twitter. Given that Arvidsson hasn't really been the same since that Bortuzzo hit, I think this is a decent return for him. Gives flexibility in the cap now as well, and helps stock up for drafts or trading those picks. I would be curious to see what Preds fans think of the return that they got for Arvidsson, a 2021 second-round pick and a 2022 third-round pick for Victor Arvidsson, plus just north of $4 million a year off your books.
Probably good not to get too caught up in that, too, because I think this is more about offloading a contract of an underperforming player than it is about the return.
Yeah, I think, unless you're trying to move somebody else and package that with picks. But I don't think that's a necessary step at this point, given that the expansion draft is going to – I mean, it's basically your cop-out. You can get rid of another one of these underperforming, highly paid players and say, yeah, let him be Seattle's problem. Let him underperform for the money in Seattle, which, again, we come back to Matt Duchesne. 615-737-1045. I said we were going to talk about the NFL here, but we ended up with a little bit of breaking news, despite how Lucas Panzica failed us in the breaking news at the top of the hour update.
We'll not take this slander.
I mean, just not slander. It's facts.
The news broke as I started speaking. I opened my Twitter as you were opening the show, and it said 53 seconds ago, just below when my update started. My update had started about 120 seconds prior.
Then don't lie to me and say it's breaking news at the top of the hour. Don't lie to me that way. You're lying to the audience. You've betrayed the audience. That I cannot stand for.
Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols.
Except 53 seconds late. Rhett Bryan will not be 53 seconds late, the great one from Titans Radio. Your calls as well. We'll talk about NFL records, single-season records, that have the ability to be broken this year, given that we are adding an extra game to the regular season. That, as well as your reaction to this latest Preds news, 615-737-1045. And if you have NIL questions, we can do that as well. I see Casey has called back in. We will see if his phone is up to the task. Rhett Bryan on the other side. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
Need a Titans fix? Bam! Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone, your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans Radio. 104.5 The Zone.
on his way to the Los Angeles Kings. Him and his contract for a 2021 second-round pick, a 2022 third-round pick. We will keep you up to date on the latest, unless Lucas lies to you again and tells you that it's breaking news without having breaking news in his update.
I hate you so much.
In the meantime, we're joined by an actual professional.
Breaking news.
Rhett Bryan, the voice of this radio show. Rhett Bryan joins us now from Titans Radio.
Might as well get a breaking news sounder from Rhett, right?
Oh no, you're taking advantage of this man's good graces because now he's into the time of year.
I'm literally doing your job, Lucas. I mean, come on, man.
I mean, you have so much fun with it.
Oh, listen to how he just pushes it back in my
That's
life.
right.
You have so much. You're so much better.
He's doing you a favor.
So much. Yeah, you have so much fun at it.
This is unbelievable.
Breaking news.
What we get to one summer season with our radio show, and he immediately starts mailing it in.
I must admit, I'm really looking forward to the holiday weekend this weekend.
Oh hell yeah! 4th of July in Nashville is about to be crazy. What did you tell me when we were in the green room?
The Nashville the Convention Center and Visitors Bureau, whatever it is that Butch Spiriton heads up.
Yes,
they're expecting 400,000 people downtown
for the fireworks.
Well, it's the third largest fireworks display in the United States.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah, it's big time.
No,
and post-pandemic, so or you can say that. I mean, we're coming out of it, but
post-ish.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have one a year ago
for
people to come and enjoy. It was all done virtually, so I wouldn't doubt there'd be 400,000 people here because there was like 250 2 years ago.
Right.
So.
Insane numbers. Exciting.
Oh, ridiculous.
Exciting things to come over the holiday weekend. Exciting content to come with Rhett Bryan in studio. We're going to talk about what single-season NFL records have the potential to be broken in a 17-game season. We do have, though, people who are asking a couple of different questions, though, Rhett, that I want to get to quickly. All right, Casey, your phone line better be good. I'm giving you a second try at this thing. Casey in Lewisburg.
How we sounding?
Oh, like sex in the phone. It's beautiful.
Wow.
Oh man.
Beautiful.
Oh.
You got it.
Hey, I was about to say the whistler knocked me out the first time, so I had to make sure I get back on here. But what I was just wanting to say, man, is I don't think people are looking at the opportunity value that guys are going to get from getting all these endorsements. Because I mean, I don't know the percentage exactly for the guys that get to the NFL and actually stay. But a lot of them are going to have stuff to fall back on if they decide, not if they decide, but if they don't finish, their college degree or anything, they'll have these business opportunities to be able to fall back on if they don't work out in the NFL.
No, without question. I think it's going to be they're actually going to learn how to manage their money, which is not something that they were doing in college before.
And especially if you have a social media following, you've got a good Instagram list of followers, etc. Because we were talking off break about these two girls that are twins that play basketball for Fresno State. I think combined they have almost 650,000 followers on Instagram, and they've just announced that the twins are endorsing.
They're inducing
Boost Mobile and some other like a health care something. Anyway, it's just happening. It's the wild west. Here we are.
Now here's where I'm going to have a problem with it. The only thing that's going to make me upset about college athletes doing endorsements and working with corporations if they start getting blue check marks before me, I'm going to be salty.
Well, I guess you can get ready to be salty because I think that's what's
a lot of them already do.
No, I know. I don't understand.
My name, image, and likeness. I have just signed an endorsement deal with my favorite soft drink, Diet Mountain Dew, which it's the nectar from the heavens. And so that's completely a joke. I wish that I was. That's my favorite.
Your entire Titans radio production elements fueled by Diet Mountain Dew.
Yes, indeed. And they literally are.
Yes. In the meantime, Rhett, you sent me a couple ideas because you're better at this job than I am. A couple ideas for different angles that we could take on this 17-game regular season. And this is courtesy of Athlon Sports. They did a whole page, basically, on 7 records. There are many, obviously, single-season NFL records in the sport. For example, they list George Blanda, former Houston Oilers quarterback, throwing 42 interceptions in 14 games in 1962. Probably not happening again. But when it comes to passing yards, passing touchdowns, and, of course, the one with the most local ties, rushing yards, single-season rushing records in the NFL, which has the most potential to fall with an expanded 17-game regular season. So the way that we thought we'd do this with Rhett is talk about the 3 of the 7, and I'll go through that list of 7 quickly for you. Passing yards, passing touchdowns, interceptions, sacks, total touchdowns, receiving yards, and rushing yards. Which of those 7, which 3 do you think, Rhett Bryan, have the most potential to be broken with an additional game added to the schedule?
The first 2 you listed would be out of the first 3. Passing yards, I think, has a real shot. When you consider Deshaun Watson had 4,823. The record is 5,477 yards by Peyton Manning with the Broncos in 2013. The right team, the right quarterback gets hot. It's a quarterback league. I think that is something that is within range. And the passing touchdowns. Peyton Manning also in that 2013 year with 55 touchdowns, the passing record. Aaron Rodgers had 48 with one good receiver and a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So either one of those, I think, could fall. And then the total touchdowns. The current record holder is LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006, where he had 31 total scores. Alvin Kamara had 21 last year. And again, you get the right kind of player. They even say here in this athlon that, like Christian McCaffrey would be a candidate who could break the record. Provided his health is there, I could totally see that.
Now, I'm going to disagree with you on one of those specifically, because the passing yard record, it immediately jumped into my mind as a record that could be broken with an expanded regular season game. Now, Peyton Manning is considerably, and it's just we're doing current record and based off the 2020 statistical results. So there have been players who have thrown for 5,000 yards, Matt Stafford in particular, outside of Deshaun Watson throwing for 4,800 last year on a terrible Houston Texans team. But I think passing yards, I mean, just based on what an average quarterback throws for in an NFL regular season, which is right for example, I think people, and in fact, I was shocked to find out that Ryan Tannehill did not throw for 4,000 yards last year. I was blown away by the fact. I mean, he had 3,800 and he scored 40 touchdowns, but Lucas had to fact check me on that because I'm like, yeah, Ryan Tannehill had 4,000 yards last year.
Nope,
sure did not. So, and that's on the 3rd highest scoring offense in football last year. Blake Bortles is renowned for chasing in games with the Jacksonville Jaguars and being able to pile up passing yards. Good fantasy quarterback if you had Blake Bortles, but not contributing to wins and losses. Losses certainly, but not contributing to wins. The passing yardage, because if you're just looking at Peyton Manning versus Deshaun Watson, that's almost a 700-yard difference between those two players.
But what if Aaron Rodgers gets traded to Denver?
Then we are probably talking about a situation where Aaron Rodgers is not playing with a bunch of dudes. He's actually got a talented wide receiver
core is a hell of a lot better than what Green Bay's got right now.
Right.
I mean, Noah Fant at tight end, Cortland Sutton. I mean, you just start checking off the list.
I think that passing yards, I mean, with the way that the game is going, and this is, this is why the Titans are kind of the antithesis of this, that they can be such a high-scoring, high-powered offense and really not have that much of it predicated off the passing game, like every other team in the league.
Sure.
But passing touchdowns, I'm absolutely with you on. Total touchdowns, I mean, Lucas, if you can look up for me what Derrick Henry had in terms of total touchdowns last year, because I know he did not have, or I think he did not have a receiving touchdown, if I remember correctly.
I know he had a 50-yard reception against the Texans here in, week 2 or 3, whatever it was.
Total touchdown-wise, I think it would have to be somebody like a Kamara, like a Christian McCaffrey, who
sees more touches,
who is continuously cited as a better running back than Derrick Henry when we're not talking about running back skill set. We're talking about wide receiver skill set. But I digress.
Yeah, he had 17.
17.
All rushing.
The record 31. So he would need to be more of a pass-catching threat to be able to challenge this record.
Or be a back like LaDainian Tomlinson, who had a lot of short yardage, scores to go with it. Because that year he had 31. I want to say he had 20. That was the year I think he was MVP.
Right.
He had like 20 rushing touchdowns or something like that. But, yeah, you would think because, Christian McCaffrey not that long ago accounted for, 40 or nearly 50% of the offense went through his hands.
Yeah. And that's That is it can happen, and you can have touchdown vulture situations where Derrick Henry can just feast off 1-yard touchdowns if that's how they choose to use him, if they want to be super obvious about it. But the thing I think Titans fans are probably most focused on, Red, is the rushing total.
Sure.
2,105 yards. Eric Dickerson for the L.A. Rams in 1984. Of course, the 2020 NFL leader, back-to-back NFL rushing champion, number 22 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts, Derrick Henry, with 2,027 yards rushing last year. So, if you were to average, the Athlon article points this out, if you were to average 126.7 rushing yards per game last season, Derrick Henry did average 126.7 rushing yards per game last season. He would be able to eclipse Eric Dickerson. There is a statistic out there about running backs who have made it to 2,000 yards. Now, there have only been 8 of them, including Derrick, but there has not been one to rush for even 1,500 yards after rushing for 2,000.
Right.
I think Derrick is totally capable of 1,500. To break the rushing record with an additional game asks more of him from a physical standpoint, even as he is a physical freak of nature. That would be an incredibly taxing situation on a player who you're trying to keep around, I think, as long as possible.
Well, you're getting into the window where he has had 300-plus carries and really 350-plus carries in his emergence here, just like you see all these other great running backs in their histories, in the league. Now, here's the thing, though. If you've got Julio Jones and he's as healthy as he says he is, and knock on wood, that still is the case throughout the season, and A.J. Brown and Josh Reynolds and the whole deal, I think Derrick may have a chance to flirt with 2,000 yards again and maybe Eric Dickerson's record on less carries, because you can't stack 9 in the box.
Right.
You can't stack 8 in the box.
And the Titans saw more 8-man boxes than any team in the sport last year.
And he would have to have a lot of these, but I could see a scenario where he has a 200-yard rushing game on 16 carries just because he's getting chunks, and then he busts one, and he gets some chunks again, and he busts an – I mean, we've seen him do it when people are loading the box up. Now that you can't cover everybody, I think that opens the possibility.
I think it's a lovely thought. I try to stay grounded in reality. Not that Rhett Bryan isn't either, but
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying I think.
You good? What happened? What happened there? Who do I blame?
The satellite feed came in.
Is that your breaking news sounder?
It should be.
I thought Rhett cussed and you had like an immediate censor button.
Honestly, I thought we were having an emergency alert system.
Well, so there's a pod that always needs to stay up.
Nobody knows what a pod is. Who are you telling this?
A pod is a potentiometer in radio talk, and that is also a fader. It's something that a guy like Lucas moves the volume up and down and turns on and off. Go ahead.
That would have been more productive than me just yelling at Lucas.
Eloquently put. There's a pod on this board that always needs to stay up. And every once in a while, it has not happened very often. Apparently it happened at 3HL this week, where Westwood One will send a signal to our satellite to bounce it back, and it creates that sound over the air.
Well, so it was Westwood One pinging our receivers.
Yes.
I still think you should have to pay a fine to Home Street Home.
I think you should invoice Westwood One.
Wow.
I'll send my invoice out for $1 today.
So yeah, they're pinging our XDS receivers, which is how we get the rest of the programming, like all the great events you hear, like the
College World Series, Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. And that's how other radio stations in 3 different states get Titans radio, because it is generated from here but sent out via satellite with Westwood One, and we have similar things like that to test tones and audio. But I honestly thought there was an emergency. I was like, oh gosh, what's happened?
You didn't think you were going to get a lesson in radio today, did you, folks? 615-737-1045. Somebody, Swag Buck in the comments on Twitch says Vandy and 7. Speaking of the College World Series, unfortunately not. Chris is in Nashville. He wants to ask Rhett Bryan a question about the 17-game regular season. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Okay, so I was just going to throw out there with the new expansion to the NFL. But I like the fact that they did add that additional game. Definitely brings in more revenue for the NFL and stuff. Because looking at the revenue aspect of preseason to regular season is a huge difference. However, that one home extra game to me could also be the difference between, hey, we have home field advantage. That could be a big factor as well in winning or losing. Personally, I like even games. That way it's like, hey, you know what? We have an even chance. We have our fans behind our back. Also, with, like y'all were saying about all these NFL records, like with Peyton Manning and his passing touchdowns and stuff like that. I like to say I'm all for it, but at the same time, I'm like, some of these records that are in place, 20, 30 years from now, who's to say they will add an extra game or two? And, all these current records, people will be like, those aren't really good stats. But if you look at it now, it's like, whoa, that's insane. So, like I say, I'm definitely for the extension of the games, but the records, I'm kind of against it at the same time.
Well, Chris, I'll say this. Now, let me kind of circle back with what Chris said.
There was a lot there.
There was, but that's okay.
Thank you for the
that's
call,
why,
Chris.
we're glad to have the call.
Chris is a lot, or Rhett's a lot nicer than I am.
Every generation, it's a cyclical thing where you can look back. When they played 12 games, when they played 14 games, and then, they played 16 for 35 years plus. So, it's all relative in terms of looking back at history. And that's why, there's one of these we didn't mention. You said interceptions. My favorite pre-1957 player, Dick Night Train Lane, who played for the Rams and the Lions and played with our good friend Dick LeBeau, the former defensive coordinator. He has 14 interceptions in a 12-game season. Now, rules were different. You had the Night Train necktie, which is a legal clothesline back then.
Yeah.
So I probably would have had 14 interceptions too. But, all right, so here's the other thing, Chris, I want to clear up with you. The whole move from a preseason, taking away a preseason game and going to a regular season game, it's not as big a financial deal as you think. Yes, TV money's there, but these owners make a lot more money in the preseason because they get all of the gate. They're paying guys minimal, tiny little stipends because their regular season money doesn't come in until week one, the salary cap money that they had negotiated in each of their contracts. But, and then the other thing I want to state too, the AFC has the first year of the home field advantage, 9 home games and the rest on the road, and only 3 preseason games, but 2 of the preseason games are on the road. Next year, the NFC will have that advantage. So the Titans will have 8 regular season home games and 2 home games in the preseason out of the 3 preseason games left. But to Chris's point, down the road, we'll have an 18-game schedule. That's what all this stuff is leading towards.
It's all just a ramp up.
2 preseason games. And you're already seeing the trend where teams are scrimmaging against each other like the Titans are going to do with Tampa in August. And so you'll have 2 preseason games and 18-game regular season. Now, that's going to bring on more talk. That's a thing down the road in another CBA where you're going to have to negotiate bigger taxi squad, another bye week, those kinds of things.
So I don't want to call you an NFL historian, Rhett, even though you are, because historian connotes that you are old, and I don't think that's fair.
I'm getting old. There ain't no doubt about that.
It's okay. I've got a birthday coming up. I'm going to officially be in my late 20s, and that hurts me. But
how much does it annoy you, Rhett, that we're complaining about being in our late 20s and being old?
It doesn't bother me because, look, let me just let this cat out of the bag. Come September the 17th, I'll be 50.
Ooh, we got
a 5-0. I'm getting the AARP card this time around the block. Boys.
Now, wait, is that a game day? No, because their first game is on the 12th.
Yeah.
So that would not be a game day.
That's correct.
But that would be, we're going to have to celebrate you in Seattle.
But, no, I understand that because you guys are both in the milestone window where most of the milestones for you are done. You know, the only thing left for you guys right now really is getting married. Because
all downhill.
You turn, well, no, I mean, think about it. You turn 16, you learn how to drive. You turn 18, you can vote. You turn 21, you can drink. You know, you hurry up and wait for those things. When you become an adult, time flies. I mean, I'm a testament to that, man. I was your age when I started on Titans Radio.
Yeah. Rhett Bryan said marriage into the microphone. Both Lucas and I's butt cheeks just clenched.
Well, I understand completely. That's a hell of a commitment and about a 50% failure rate. So I get it.
Oh, thank you, Rhett.
I'm here to sprinkle sunshine everywhere.
I was just getting ready to ask him about, does the NFL, why don't we do it on the other side? Rich, you got 5 more minutes in you?
Yes.
All right. More Rhett Bryan and more sprinkles of sunshine coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
They have Middle Tennessee sports on their mind 24/7. The 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. This afternoon starting at 3, 104.5 The Zone.
work. It is already well underway.
Oh, I'm in the salt mine, and I am, I'm working in the laboratory.
You love to see it. Nothing makes me happier because Rhett always gets here before I do because I'm a slacker and Rhett's good at his job.
I've been here since 7 a.m.
That's disgusting. What's wrong with you?
Well, I have a lot of things to do. I mean, it's basically there's one of me, and then I have to get everything ready, packaged, and to go to get it to the game, and then I have help.
Yeah.
So, I got a lot to do.
This is and meanwhile he's providing us content for the radio show.
Well, that's okay. I'm glad to do it.
I told Rhett that I needed one day I need to be as useful to him as he is to me. But it's just I don't see any way that there's possible. The only usefulness that I can serve to Rhett Bryan is to make Lucas Panzica comedic relief during the commercial breaks. There's a growing tension behind the glass, by the way. Are we going to be okay, bud?
I'm waiting for the right time to strike, to exact vengeance.
He's calculating.
I'm going to play along.
Wow. The divide has begun, and it's not just the glass.
Yeah, there's plenty of it. Thank God for that. Otherwise, Lucas would probably lunge at me several times during the show.
Next week to find out on the Buck Reising Show.
Except don't, because I won't be here.
Does Lucas
but do it anyway.
And Buck get along anymore?
Just the at the end of that.
Divorce rates are 50% nowadays.
That's right. Rhett Bryan, sprinkles of
Maybe
sunshine
worse
update.
In a pandemic, spending all the time with, it's like, get out of the house.
You're either.
I can't. There's people out here with problems.
You're either making babies or making paperwork.
Whew.
One or the other. Speaking of paperwork, speaking of things that are written down on paper, I don't know how to make that a smoother transition, but NFL records is something that we've been talking about. Now, Rhett, as I was trying to say this politely without aging you and calling you an NFL historian, but you do have a great depth of knowledge about this league. With the expansion of the regular season, do you view that as kind of what Chris was alluding to earlier, a little bit of it cheapening some of the records that will, or some of the new figures that will be used to break existing records, understanding that they are not really at all on the same playing field. When you're talking about 14 interceptions in a year where there was only 12 regular season games by Dick Night Train Lane.
And Xavier Howard of the Dolphins, who's in a money dispute with them right now, had 10 last year, which is great. And I think there's only been a handful of folks that have had 10 in the last few years. So, you're talking about a record that's stood nearly 70 years here.
Well, and there's a degree of luck in all of this because interceptions are, turnovers.
And rule changes in Dick Night Train Lane's case. Look, I can understand our caller, Chris, that talked about the potential of watering things down. I can certainly see that side of it, but here's the other side. The other side is you've got to be durable and perform at a high level for 17 games to even be talking about being in these numbers. So there's an appreciation there. A player can't help it if the league expanded to 17 games and, knock on wood, he's able to play in all 17, contribute, help his team, and put up monster numbers and break an NFL record. So that's the kind of way I choose to look at it. And look, the Derrick Henry thing, I think he'll be the first back to get over 1,500 yards after having a 2,000-yard rushing season. We haven't had one yet. I think he'll do that.
Sure.
And I still, there's a part of me that thinks he might have a chance at another 2,000-yard season, which no one's done it twice, and certainly not back-to-back. So you're talking about a whole other set of records in this thing. But we'll see what happens.
I stopped doubting Derrick Henry just on principle after I was one of these people who was advocating to not pay the running back just because he was a running back and then
looks like a pretty cheap, affordable deal right now, doesn't it?
Hell yeah. Well, it was an affordable deal when they did it.
Think about what
that was before everybody else got paid.
Think about what Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara are making. And I know that's apples and oranges a little bit when you're talking about the difference in skill set and what they do for their teams and receiving out of the backfield. But it's a pretty good bargain.
The idea, because I remember looking at that contract and being like, I can't even get pissed about this. And I get pissed about everything. There's literally nothing that I can quibble with here.
Sure.
The idea that he took, he basically took $6 million that first year to allow them some financial flexibility to pay for Jadeveon Clowney. The fact that he's still, well undervalued at the position, given what the top of the market is. I look at that Zeke Elliott contract. That's what I feared. That's what I feared would happen to Derrick
What
Henry.
a lot of people feared.
And it's not a fair. It's the problem with sports analysis, right? You do the analysis before the result. It's like saying that you can't rush for 1,500 yards after having a 2,000-yard season just because you've never seen anybody do it before.
And look, the NFL by example and the way things have gone have compartmentalized the position to begin with, and it's been devalued. You've seen plenty of guys that chew them up and spit them out, and Derrick seems to be the exception to the rule right now. Now, knock on serious wood. But yeah, that's what a lot of people feared is that, oh man, tread tire depth, It's like, golly, I hope that, he's the only back in history of football to rush for 2,000 yards in high school, college, and the NFL. Let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah, it turns out Derrick Henry good at football.
That's a revelation, brother. He is pretty dang good at it.
All right, okay, now you decide to get fancy with the production.
Well, there's the shot he decided to take. He was waiting, biding his time.
Welcome to the height of the entertainment ladder. Lucas Panzica.
Little fanfare from Lucas.
You proud of yourself?
Yes.
In a word, yes.
The fanfare is for Rhett Bryan of Titans Radio, who does an exceptional job, whether he's carrying me, producing our content for us, or making all of the magic happen behind the scenes for Titans Radio. Again, at Rhett B. Tennessee is where you follow him. At Titans Radio is where you can give them a follow. They have a blue check mark. I do not. That's one thing that Titans Radio has over
Thanks for having me. You have a great holiday and time off. I'm going to recharge the batteries a bit myself. Everybody out there, have fun, but be careful.
And enjoy the 400,000 large downtown.
I'll be enjoying it from the comforts of my home and television. I will not be doing that.
We'll come back. We'll get back into the NIL discussion because I want to rip Dabo Swinney. I've been waiting 2 hours today to rip Dabo Swinney. I'm going to do it. Coming up next. I'm Buck Reising.
Inside and outside the locker room, we cover the Titans 24/7. Got it! Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans Radio. 104.5 The Zone.
615-737-1045 is how you do so. 615-737-1045. So we're going to get into why I think Dabo Swinney needs to immediately vacate his post as Clemson's head coach momentarily. But before we do that, I want to read some of the tweets that we got during Rhett Bryan's segment with us. Like, let's see, where did it go? I just had it pulled up, and then immediately I got flooded with a bunch more tweets. All right, Michael Stacy. This is why I love the show. It is always sports. Oh, excuse me. He says, is it always sports? No, but that's okay. It's always entertaining and educational. Hashtag pot. Hashtag potometer. I don't know how, whatever the hell the word Rhett Bryan said.
Yeah, I also have no idea.
And you're responsible for managing them.
It's a pot.
It's a pot. I've worked in radio for 6 years now. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. Anyway, we also have a moment of me being subjected to great shame and great anger this morning at 5:26 a.m. that we'll get to probably later in the hour. But we've been talking about name, image, and likeness today. For those of you who are just now joining us, July 1st is the day. Today is the day that name, image, and likeness legislation goes into effect for a great many states. 23 states specifically have officially passed NIL legislation. For many of these states, Tennessee included, Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Mississippi, Nebraska, New Mexico, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Texas. College athletes can immediately start monetizing their names, images, and likenesses. Likenesses? But where this becomes, I don't even think it's complicated. Where this becomes interesting is how schools will go about legislating this stuff. What's the way that I'm trying to put this, Lucas? I just got a tweet about BYU. Basically, what I'm trying to say is how schools and their policies influence the kind of money that NCAA athletes can take. For example, BYU. BYU is a school with religious affiliation to the Mormon religious denomination. All right, so there are several restrictions on Mormons, whether that's, no premarital sex or something as simple as caffeine consumption. I just saw a tweet, and I'm going to need somebody to verify this for me because we try to do our best, but this is live radio, so there's only so much vetting that I can do being a solo entity, even though Lucas does his best to research things while I'm sending him diving around for a million other things while I work. But I've just seen a tweet about BYU athletes not being able to endorse soft drinks or coffee because BYU and the Mormon religion does not allow for caffeine consumption.
And that is part of the caveats. If it goes against institutional policies of whatever that university is, they have the legal right to kind of nix that.
So I guess that's a part of the contract or a part of the paperwork that you sign when you agree to go to a school with religious affiliations or whatever the school's moral compass might say would exclude you from participating in X, Y, and Z, right? They're not going to have 18-year-olds signing up to endorse what kind of booze does Ron Slay have in the studio right now? I can't see the bottle. It's turned away from me.
I believe Red Dog.
Red Dog. Some kind of Red Dog some kind of Red Dog liquor. It sounds questionable at best. Every time I come in here, there's a new bottle sitting at Slay's station. I'm concerned about him. 615-737-1045. But with this particular situation, as we work our way through this interim process, this interim period, where the schools are trying to feel things out, where the NCAA is being largely incompetent in their position. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1045 is how you do so. I want to see just how far athletes are going to be comfortable pushing this stuff, how far boosters are going to be comfortable pushing this stuff, because I think that outside of, sports information directors who are responsible for handling the college athletes and the college coaches, outside of them largely pooping themselves with how much harder their job just got, trying to make their way through, wade their way through everything that they do on a day-to-day basis on top of the financial implications of some companies just DMing athletes. I want to see how much this is going to pollute an already dirty process, which is the recruiting process. I am fascinated to know how much NIL, how much financial benefits can factor into recruiting. I think there's a great deal of this that is going to become, what we already know it to be, whether it's an envelope of money exchanged at a tailgate from a booster to a recruit, whether it's a meal, but not like a McDonald's value meal, maybe like a dinner at Kane Prime that an athlete is receiving, whether it's something like the amount of car dealerships per capita in the city that the college institution is in that decides how many car endorsements are going to be available for potential student athletes to capitalize on. How much of the local economy is going to be factored into a high school athlete's recruiting commitment, and how universities, coaches in particular, kind of strategize around this. For people who are concerned today about college football never being the same, I think there's probably a degree of truth to that. You're not going to, and I don't mean in terms of the competitiveness of the sport, because it's still going to be Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, all the names, all the best talented, or all the most, the highest profile teams are going to continue to get the most talent. Notre Dame included in this, even if they stink when they make it into the playoffs. You understand what I'm saying? The best schools are going to keep getting the best players. This isn't changing that all that dramatically. What's changing is the ability for people who want to ignore what college football actually is. College football is dirty. College football is largely gross. College football, and really college athletics in general, as evidenced by the HBO special that they just did on college basketball and everything that's gone there, people stop being shocked by college basketball. But college football is a big enough enterprise that people can't look away. You have to understand exactly what it is that you're buying. For a long time before this legislation passed, before the Supreme Court took a look at things and was like, you're doing what with unpaid labor? You're making how much off of teenagers, off of free work, off of broken bodies? How exactly is this allowed? Oh, wait, it's not. 9-0. Unanimous decision. Get this business model the hell out of here. For a long time, college football fans, I think, have either pleaded ignorance or been ignorant about what it is that they're consuming on Saturdays. It is not the pageantry of walking through the Grove and the tailgates at Ole Miss. It is not just the celebration when the Tennessee Vols run through the Power T. It's not smoky. It's not the buffalo Ralphie, the buffalo that they run out there before Colorado games. It's none of that. It's money. It's a business. It's compensation for the players who are making all of this possible. Whether it's people wanting to ignore that fact about what it is exactly that they're consuming, I've never quite understood the logic behind people who look at college football and say, no, this is so much more pure than the pros. Or the same with college basketball. Look at these athletes in the NBA. They don't even try. At least in college basketball, they try, which is blatantly untrue. If you've watched any of this Clippers Sun series that ended last night, where the Clippers are in an elimination game and just desperately diving for the ball, just throwing their bodies in the paint. Desperation is when these athletes are at their best in competition. There's no question about that. But it's the differences between the pros and the college ranks. It's already been a very, very blurred line. All we have done is remove the blurs and let people understand exactly what it is that they're looking at. I want to rip Dabo Sweeney coming up next. Scott and Beth Page is going to lead us off when we come back because there are many of you have had questions or comments or opinions about name, image, and likeness, and I want to get into them on the other side. So Scott will lead us off. Your calls as well, 615-737-1045, and then I'm going to tear into Dabo because he said something stupid, which is not that uncommon for Dabo. But this time, I think it ought to cost him his job. We'll tell you what that is coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Stream Titans opinion on all your devices. It's the 104.5 The Zone app. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
this on the front end. I don't hate Dabo. I know a lot of people hate Dabo. I don't hate him. In fact, I admire his willingness to say things. Because, we had Tony Vitello on earlier in the week, right? Vols head coach. And we talked about, after Tony was off with us, how uncommon it is for coaches to be comfortable just saying things. Coaches are often very buttoned up, very reserved in their commentary. That's not Dabo Swinney. So from a media standpoint, I respect that. I appreciate Dabo because I believe him to be honest when he says things that I find to be stupid.
He does seem fun to cover.
Yes, of all the stiff, crotchety, dusty, annoyingly buttoned up college coaches that there are in this world, I would imagine that Dabo Swinney is probably more fun. And Nick Saban, just because you don't know whether you're going to get ripped in a press conference or not.
Oh, yeah. Love Nick Saban.
Which I get on a regular basis with Vrabel. Vrabel is very comfortable just ripping us whenever we screw up. Head on a swivel. But what Dabo has done recently, and why we're talking about Dabo, is because we've been talking about name, image, and likeness. And Dabo has been advocating really against this since 2014. We are now 7 years removed from those initial comments. And I think that based on those comments that Dabo said ago, that Dabo should lose his job or should be made to resign based on what he had to say. I'll read to you those comments here in a second. But in the meantime, we're taking your calls. Scott has been waiting patiently. He has a question or a comment or maybe an observation, an opinion even, on NIL. What's up, Scott?
Hey, guys. Good talk radio this morning. Enjoying it.
Thank you.
Real quick, just three quick things. One, on the name engine, the NIL, I'm just going to call it NIL.
Sure.
It's easier. Do the players have to disclose their earnings? And the second point I'm going to make, that was the first question. The second point was the brands, I believe, that are going to benefit more from this than what I originally thought are Notre Dame, Texas, and possibly Tennessee, just because the brand does carry a little bit nationwide. Tennessee, not as much, but it's out there. It reaches pretty far. And the third thing I was going to ask was, I just lost my train of thought on that one.
That's all right.
So
it happens.
I'm going to have to go with the two. I need to call with two questions. Thank you, Buck, for always being our daddy. And Lucas, thank you for being our sensei, our Panzika sensei. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll take that.
Panzika sensei. What does that even mean?
I mean, you know what a sensei is.
Yes, a teacher.
Yes.
What lessons are you giving other than how not to produce a radio show?
Learning lessons every day.
Yeah, I bet. 615-737-1045. So, Scott, though, a couple of good points there, because there's something from the Vols Athletic Twitter account, some sound that I want to play that I saw from a video they put together earlier in the recognition that NIL for the state of Tennessee starts today. But on the question about whether athletes have to disclose their earnings, I don't know the answer to that question. Lucas, I sent Lucas scurrying as soon as Scott asked the question, because that is not something I had considered until Scott brought it up. I would imagine, since you can DM an athlete and offer him the opportunity for an undisclosed amount to come, host your tailgate event or something like that, or show up at I don't want to say show up at like a birthday party or something like that, but show up at a booster dinner or something. You can DM that directly to the athlete. I don't know that there's anything requiring said athlete to have to disclose that amount because they wouldn't be disclosing it to the university, would they? Who would they even be disclosing that to? To the NCAA? I mean, it's not like there's no cap on it.
Well, most of these universities, like, you can find out what a coach is making, right? Even what their play-by-play voice is making, because it's public information. Freedom of Information Act can lead you to a lot of those numbers. But like a Vanderbilt, like they don't have to show you what Clark Lee made in his first year. They don't have to tell you what Derek Mason's buyout was after he was fired. So I wonder if that will apply to athletes, as what we were talking about earlier. Like, the institution's policies can prevent an athlete from sponsoring a certain product. Like BYU can prevent an athlete from sponsoring alcohol because it's against the university policy. So, I'm still trying to find it, but that wouldn't surprise me if Freedom of Information
would
allow you to find out players' earnings.
But wait. That's the biggest difference between all that. This is the only thing keeping it not professional. The players aren't employees. The players are not employees of the university.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
So you can find out what Bob Kessling makes. You can find out what Josh Heupel makes. You would not be able to find out how much Harrison Bailey makes because Harrison Bailey is not an employee of the university. This is the whole problem with the model, right? They work for the university. They make money for the university, but they are not officially employees. That's how the NCAA has gotten away with this crap for so long. So my answer with that, I don't know, is my answer, Scott, and I don't want to speak ignorantly and misinform the larger part of the audience. But what I would say to you is I would imagine that they do not have to disclose those earnings to anybody but the IRS, I would say. Because as V-Love just pointed out, they'd have to disclose to Uncle Sam. And he had some colorful language that I'm not sure I can read on the radio. But you know what I'm saying. 615-737-1045 is how you get in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. But to that end, talking about brands that will benefit from this, universities that will benefit from this, despite not being worth a damn on the football field or on the basketball court or on the soccer pitch, wherever. Scott brought up Texas, who is perpetually back or not back, or nobody can figure it out. Texas and Miami being two of those, but Miami is private, something to keep in mind. Notre Dame, which is a brand unlike almost any other in collegiate sports because, Notre Dame has its own broadcast contract, is independent of conference, but has its own broadcast contract with NBC specifically for that school because Notre Dame is a national brand, not just, those of us who lived and grew up in the state of Indiana where you're a Notre Dame football fan and an Indiana basketball fan before, Indiana became a football school. And then he brought up Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has been doing this for a while where they recognized, or somebody smartly recognized, that the University of Tennessee was not going to be able to solely recruit on the strength and the history of, say, the football program. So they started marketing, keyword marketing, not recruiting, but marketing to recruits the ability to build their brands at the University of Tennessee. They launched a players-only podcast that people like Big Cat, Dan Katz from Barstool, one of the biggest names in sports media, and maybe some of the terrestrial radio audience doesn't know much about Barstool or Big Cat, but if you don't, you should. One of the biggest entities in all of sports goes on the Players podcast. Peyton Manning, Mike Keith, a variety of different people that the players have access to because their players are building their brand through that podcast.
And that's where schools like Tennessee that have not had success on the football field recently, and like you said, at this point, high school recruits have no knowledge or memory of Tennessee being at the top of college football.
No, we're starting to get into the point where recruits are no longer born in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. They're not anymore. None of them are.
Feels like 98 doesn't apply.
But that's where Tennessee can actually benefit from this.
Correct. And they put out a video, UT Athletics, or what is it, Vol_Athletics, on Twitter, put out a video today specifically to inform the public and largely to inform recruits of whatever sport that they are trying to recruit in, that Tennessee is going to outbrand other universities. The focus is on winning, of course, on the field, on the court, in, if you're a swimmer, whatever the hell. It's in your respective place of competition. But you know where else Tennessee can guarantee you a win? Eyeballs. That's what they put out this video with the intention of drawing attention to today.
Not only is Knoxville a perfect spot, but what we're building is one of a kind in the country.
Years of innovation brought to this moment. This is a great time for these youngsters nowadays.
When you think about Ball Nation, right, it's not just in East Tennessee, it's not just in Knoxville. It literally is across the country.
When you get people around the table, the first question you get to start with is, how can we be the most unique program in the country?
We are not here to release a plan. We're releasing a product.
These kids deserve it. It's a special place, so I think they're on the right track.
My job is to help tell those stories. We're here to be an asset to them, to give them what they need.
You know, the things that have in place, like a TV studio, are really unlike most schools.
Great production value already, my goodness.
The big thing pushed on me was building your brand, you know, what Tennessee can do for my brand.
It's not just training our student athletes in terms of how to build their personal brand, but there's an actual degree.
I know what they do is everything to do what they have to make it right for the athlete.
I was a former athlete. I want to show players they're bigger than just like their sport. They have so much more to offer.
You should stay. We're working with the best people in the country.
And as a fan, it's like really cool.
How do we put a team together, and how do we not just win a game, how do we win a season? How do we dominate?
We have to learn how to have a winning mentality. Nothing else matters.
I don't care what sport you play, you're going to develop a following here for the rest of your life.
We on the way.
Our job is to set these young men and women up for financial success.
So that's the hype video that Tennessee put out today in honor of July 1st, the official day that name, image, and likeness legislation is legal in the state of Tennessee. They're not, what was the quote? They're not putting out a plan. They're putting out a product.
And Tennessee's been putting out that product for a long time with VFL Films and their production team. They're very, very, very good at what they do. Light years ahead of like where the football team is compared to the rest of the SEC.
Oh, no. Vol Films, the Vol Network, or is it VFL Films?
VFL Films, yeah.
VFL Films. They are some of the best in the country. LSU is also at the forefront of this kind of stuff. Guys love to be able to see themselves in these, cinematic features that the schools produce on a week-by-week basis. They're bright, they're shiny, they're flashy. The production value is incredible. They can post them on Instagram. They can send it to all their buddies. They can be celebrated as a brand. They're being recognized, and now they're being sold.
So what kind of advantage does that make for Tennessee when a prospect out of Nashville is considering he's between Tennessee and Kentucky? Kentucky, maybe next year they're coming off a 9-win season. Tennessee coming off a 6-6 year where they had a bowl ban. Kentucky would have the upper hand in that in any other situation. Mark Stoops can say, we're winning. We have an established winning program here that's one of the best in Kentucky history. Tennessee can say, we can market your product far better than they can.
The recruit's going to ask, what definition camera do you have to shoot on game days? Oh, Kentucky's shooting in 4K. Well, that's nice. Tennessee's got 8K. This is how you're going to start seeing guys. I mean, not solely, but I mean,
it's an example of leveling the playing field.
I mean, we've provided several examples of that today. Whether it's the money from sponsors going to the athletes and themselves instead of as university, like the official. I'm just looking at a water bottle because I have one in front of me. The official water bottle of the University of Tennessee no longer has to be the official water bottle of the University of Tennessee, or at least pay that. They can pay to be the official water bottle of Harrison Bailey or Hendon Hooker or Joe Milton, who's going to probably to be the starting quarterback and make everybody very sad. This is going to become fascinating. Now, we put this to a poll. We have some time here because the poll segments are much shorter, but I want to read I want to see some of the answers because we put this on a poll at Buck Reising on Twitter is where you can vote or comment on all of the ridiculous poll questions that Lucas produces for my Twitter account pre-show. And we put out what is the most ridiculous endorsement deal we could see from a college athlete. Lucas, what have some of the responses been? Because I've seen quite a bit of creativity.
Well, what would yours be?
What would mine be?
Yes. What would you have endorsed in college? And I know this will be a topic on Blaine and Mickey coming up too.
That's a different question. What would I have endorsed in college? I would have loved. So the answer would have been Kilroy's Bar and Grill because Kilroy's is the best college bar in the entire country, and you can fight me on that. I will fight you in the streets on that. But the actual answer would have been Mother Bear's Pizza because I ate so much Mother Bear's Pizza. I lived behind Mother Bear's Pizza. They have something called the Tuscaloosa touchdown which is pulled pork on a pizza, red onions, banana peppers, Sweet Baby Ray's sauce. It was, I mean, you had to like have a tolerance. It was like drinking. You had to have a tolerance to eat this thing. but oh my God, it is the best pizza that I have ever had in my life, and I would sell myself out entirely if I could push Mother Bear's Pizza for a living.
So what's the most ridiculous endorsement deal we could see from a college athlete? Michael Jennings says OnlyFans.
I mean, that's not ridiculous. That's a part of the economy now. Like that, OnlyFans doesn't apply. If you want to bang on camera, I mean, you could do that now.
You can make, but student athletes are free to make an OnlyFans. Like they're free to make a cameo.
Was OnlyFans was OnlyFans like restricted for college athletes?
I mean, if you're making any money based on your status as a student athlete, then yes.
But it's not on the status of the student athlete. It's just about people being weird. I mean, being creepy. And
well, more people aren't going to watch a certain high-profile student athlete from a certain high-profile school just because of that fact.
I mean, you're talking about selling sex tapes at that point.
Yeah, we're getting into some dangerous territory here. Eldon English says Kool-Aid sponsoring Kool-Aid.
Wait, what?
I don't know. I read that I said it before reading it.
Okay, very good, Ron.
Yeah,
Burgundy.
great.
Keep it going.
Great habit to have.
Go bleep yourself, San Diego.
Jared Mayo says Trojan sponsoring kids at USC or Michigan State.
Well, that would not be allowed at BYU because they don't believe in premarital sex.
And potentially Notre Dame.
So basically, we're getting a lot of sex jokes, is what you're telling me.
Well, Nathan Sutmiller says a dispensary deal, and then he fails a drug test and has to sit out a bowl game.
Just shout out Caden Salter.
So if a University of Colorado student athlete were to sponsor a dispensary and then fail a drug test,
that would be problematic.
Jake Irish says Matt Corral sponsoring Golden Corral. Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral.
Oh, I thought it was Coral. This is a Giles.
Yeah, I guess
County
it is
situation. Lebowski says, I'd say you'd need some athletic skill to crush it on OnlyFans. I mean, not necessarily. If you were so bad at sex that your OnlyFans was funny, then people would go to it. I guess. I don't know. You would just have to live with the public embarrassment of people knowing that you were bad at sex.
Len says Deja Vu Gentlemen's Club.
Well, no free shout-outs, but that's a possibility, I suppose. They were offering bonuses, by the way, to get people back to work. I saw a billboard they had on my drive-in because I just live like a mile away from the studio. I'm driving from North Nashville to Midtown, and there's a big old billboard for Deja Vu offering like $1,000 bonuses for people to sign up and come strip again. I guess that's been a problem in the pandemic.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty decently big news story recently that they're running out of strippers. I mean, a lot of businesses are running out of employees. Strip clubs are no different. And finally, Swaggy P. Knuckles lists a few: GNC, Viagra, medical marijuana, and a Snuggie.
A Snuggie. I would take a Snuggie.
Snuggies are great, by the way.
Yeah.
I have one.
It's like a weighted blanket. This got off the rails very quickly. I was not anticipating. I mean, this is what we get for leaving this up to the audience because they have the sense of humor of 12-year-olds.
Hi, I'm Archie Manning. Ever had a blanket you can wear?
Oh, I thought you were going to go OnlyFans with Archie Manning. I was about to get scared. Oh, let's do polls when we come back. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. No.
Titans talk and speculation on your smart speaker. Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone.
But he's driven back inside the 5, and they fling him to the turf.
Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
even if you're a podcast listener. Makes me sad. We need to figure out something to do for the podcast listeners. That drives me crazy. It's just me yammering.
That's for people smarter than me.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a great way to plug the podcast. If you want to hear me yammering for 3 hours straight, no music, the Buck Reising Show podcast in your favorite podcast app. So before we get to the polls, there is something that has been bothering me since very, very early this morning. And by the way, the Kool-Aid comment by Eldon, apparently there's an Alabama player named Kool-Aid. Like that goes, not named Kool-Aid, but goes by Kool-Aid. So apparently Kool-Aid being sponsored by Kool-Aid.
Well, that's just a no-brainer. Bo Nix of Auburn is officially sponsoring Milo Sweet Tea, which is the most Alabama thing ever.
I love that so much.
Love Milo's.
This makes me want to. I don't think I like sweet tea. I don't know that I've ever had Milo specifically.
Well, Milo's is a fast food restaurant with an amazing burger.
So this is like a chain.
Yeah,
okay.
Milo's is a
this was
burger.
like a brand of sweet tea.
Oh, it is. It's a nationwide brand of sweet tea, but it is a fast food chain in Alabama that if you ever find yourself in Birmingham for some godforsaken reason, stop by a Milo's.
We got to be careful about ripping the places that we're from.
I know.
I feel like I really hurt my stepdad's feeling the other day when I was just ripping Evansville, Indiana, with no remorse whatsoever, and then I forget that every once in a while my family members listen to this show. Anyway, let's. So there's some breaking news, and it didn't make Lucas Panzica's breaking news update. So again, he's lied to you. It's not.
It was 15 minutes ago.
Victor Arvidsson being traded to the Los Angeles Kings. It is a Vols basketball. A Basket Vols update.
B.J. Edwards, 4-star point guard of the 2022 recruiting class out of Knoxville Catholic High School, has committed to Tennessee, putting out on his Twitter account 110% committed. Thank you to all my family for support, coaches for making me better, always being there, friends for the good laughs and funny times. I love this commitment statement. And to Rick Barnes and the whole coaching staff, I'm so excited and happy and ready to work. #GoVols, staying home. So Tennessee, who currently has the number 3 recruiting class for 2021 in the country, topping the SEC, picks up their first big commitment of 2022.
I would have loved that. I would have liked his statement even more if he would have ended it, as they should all end, with #RespectMyDecision. Those always make me laugh. So that's exciting for Basket Vols fans. Another big-time recruit, an in-state recruit, something that should be, commonplace for the University of Tennessee, but certainly basketball has made great strides in this offseason. But this has not been the problem with Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes gets talent. It's what Rick Barnes does with the talent.
At least in the last 2-3 years, because that was not the story at the beginning when he was winning with Admiral Schofield and Grant Williams. It was always winning, but he's not recruiting. Now he's recruiting, but he's not winning like he was in those first few years.
By the way, wasn't Keon Johnson on 3HL this week?
He was, yeah.
Go check that out in the podcast, 3HL, wherever it is that you get your podcast. All right, polls.
Stop the count. Stop the count. The polls have closed, and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show daily correspondent, Lucas Polzica.
Take it away, bud.
What was the biggest surprise about the Vandy boys losing in the College World Series? 42% say it was their batting average overall in Omaha. 39% say it was how Kumar Rocker played in the national championship game last night. 19% say the Whistler suddenly got quiet.
Yeah, that was the only good part of that damn Vanderbilt game last night.
Last 2 nights.
No, he was still going. He was still going
ran
on
out
Tuesday.
of gas late on Tuesday.
Well, I fell asleep before. I mean, he was still going in the 7th inning after they were down 10-1 at the time or whatever it was. But yeah, that was the only rewarding part of Vanderbilt being embarrassed the way that they were in the College World Series the past 2 games. Have finally shut the hell up with the Vandy Whistler. Out of here.
Should Dabo Swinney have to quit coaching college football? 75% say yes.
Yes. Get him the hell out of here. If you're going to say, and by the way, I didn't ever rip him, did I? Did I rip him?
I mean, no, you didn't just dive in. We've hit on it throughout the show.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. I hyped it all up all day. I spent all morning thinking
well,
about
let her rip.
Dreaming of, no, we have the polls here. I mean,
we've got one poll left because we've done most ridiculous endorsements.
Okay, well, let me then find exactly the quote from Dabo Swinney so that I can properly tear into.
Before you do that, are you for or against NIL? 83% say for. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just at what point? Why would we even be talking about being against NIL at this point? So the reason that I wanted to rip Dabo Swinney is because in 2014, Dabo Swinney said something exceptionally ignorant. Was that basically, and I'm paraphrasing here. Now, in fact, I'm just going to read to you the quote about Dabo Swinney from 2014 saying that he would have to find something else to do if they made college sports professional sports by paying the athletes. I'll go do something else. This is a quote. I'll go do something else because there's enough entitlement in this world as there is. Dabo Swinney, who he was $7 million short of signing a $100 million contract. And Dabo Swinney, bless you for your honesty, Dabo. Please never stop being who you are because that provides us content, and that makes it, much easier to talk about things that coaches say when coaches actually say something. So on that point, Dabo, I respect you. But also, Dabo, $93 million contract. You're talking to the players about entitlement. You are demanding almost perfection from teenagers who are making you $7 million short of $100 million. And you are saying that you will go and do something else because there's already too much entitlement in this world. Poor you, Dabo Swinney. Go do something else. You've said this publicly. I don't care if it was 7 years ago. You said this publicly, Dabo. Stick to your word. Leave college football. Walk out on your 10-year, $93 million contract. Somebody else will be there to take your place. They will figure out a way to work around the quote-unquote entitlement that you are having to deal with for $93 million over the life of your deal.
Well, he's been steadfast about this more recently than 7 years ago.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the most egregious of these statements because he came back to this in 2019 and says, who knows what's going to happen down the road? I have no idea. I just try to be great where my feet are. Speaking of coaches saying useless things. That's my focus every day. Who knows? They may do away with college football in 3 years. There may be no college football. They may want to professionalize college athletics. Well, then maybe I'll go to the pros. If I'm going to go coach pro football, I might as well do that. I may get a terrible president or a terrible AD one day. I don't know. I have no idea what's down the road, but I know what we have at Clemson is special. I wanted to make a commitment to the university. That's what the message of the contract was. So this is after he signed his contract in 2019. $93 million. So your commitment to the university is literally quantified in that way. But Dabo wants to talk to me and you and the athletes about entitlement. There, I got that in. I feel much better. A lot better than when at 5:26 a.m. this morning, somebody at my new gym asked me if Malcolm Butler was coming off IR. Blaine and Mickey, continue your entertainment through this afternoon because they're coming up next.
J. Mart and Ramon. You don't wake up early? Here's what you missed.
What do you expect? Because if it's not what you expect, with the amount of money that's paid out, it's an ever-changing league. The NFL means not for long, not just for the players, or for coaches too.
Jason Martin and Ramon Foster. Tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
This is Andrew Bogish with a CBS Sports Minute sponsored by Pepto-Bismol, making upset stomachs